And good evening, sports fans, and welcome to a brand new episode of Let's Whine About DMV Sports here on IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that is sports. Tonight, we will be diving heavy into football. That's right, the NFL and college football season have both kicked off with a bang. The Ravens have already played to some disappointment, but we're not that disappointed. We're going to talk about why. And also, of course, do some season predictions since we haven't quite gotten there. And the college football season has kicked off as well. Maryland has already suffered what will probably be their season-defining loss. And Virginia Tech is actually off to a pretty decent start. We'll also check in on the rest of our big DMV schools, Virginia as well, although they're currently still playing. Then we will jump over to baseball, where we still have a lot going on with the Orioles and the Nationals as we come down to the final 3 weeks of the season. We're going to take a look at where both teams stand and what the priorities should be for these last 20 or so games. Not surprisingly, they are vastly different. All while kicking off a brand new month with a brand new theme that you may or may not be very curious about and might be applicable to you. We've got all that and more coming up on Let's Whine About DMV Sports on the IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that is sports. And once again, good evening, everybody, and thank you for tuning in to Let's Whine About DMV Sports here on IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that is sports, and who, for the past 10 years, has been bringing you amazing content, ranging from interviewing legendary athletes to building tailor-made shows dedicated to all major sports cities around the country. If you have not done so already, please follow us on all social media platforms. Everything you see listed down here on X, on Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, all of the above at IE Sports Radio. Do be sure to follow yours truly at Let's Whine _IESR on X, Instagram, and TikTok. Those are the three that you will find me there. We are also available on all of the below websites available for listening: Apple Podcasts, Spreaker, Spotify, iHeartRadio, Google Podcast, and more. Do be sure to check us out on all of those, whether you're listening live or listening later on in the week. And of course, you have to check out our website, iesportsradio.com. There you will find our merchandise at this link below. You can find all of the fan pages, including this one for yours truly, Let's Whine About DMV Sports, would be right there. But we've got over 30 shows, and all of the sports pages would be there for you. You can check out the blog, edited by yours truly as well, at iesportsradio.com /blog. You can also find it here, iesportsradioblog.wordpress.com. And of course, we can't go any further without giving a big shout out to our two sponsors, but I think it would be best to hear a specific word about our sponsors.
IE Sports Radio fans, this show is brought to you by Planet Jerky Premium Brisket Beef Jerky. Planet Jerky is the official jerky of the 2022 California League champion Lake Elsinore Storm, Single A affiliate of the San Diego Padres. This all brisket jerky has gluten-free options, contains no MSG, no sodium nitrate, is low in sugar, and high in protein. Go to their website at planetjerky.net and follow them on Instagram at Planet Jerky. Planet Jerky, the jerky that's on a whole other planet.
Hey there, IE Sports Radio fans. Be sure to check out our sponsor, Seal the Deal Wax Seals by Cecilia B. You just finished your very own wedding or baby shower invitations and you're looking for that extra special touch? Maybe you just wrote a letter to a relative or a friend and you want to add to their smile when they receive it. Then seal the deal with Cecilia's handmade sealing wax stamps for your invitations, letters, and gifts. You bring the deal, we'll bring the seal. You can find them on Instagram at sealthedeal_wax stamps and on Facebook, Seal the Deal Wax Seals.
And welcome back to Let's Whine About DMV Sports here on IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that is sports. Once again, shout out to our sponsors, Planet Jerky Premium Brisket Beef Jerky. It's jerky that is truly out of this world, on a whole other planet. They've got all different kinds of flavors going from classic to barbecue, volcanic jalapeno, getting a little spicy, Carolina Reaper, getting really spicy. I would caution against that one. If you like spice but you don't love spice, you gotta love the spice for the Carolina Reaper. But they've got plenty of great options for you. Do check them out on Instagram at Planet Jerky and order direct, planetjerky.net. It's only like $10 a bag, which honestly is a great price for jerky these days. And it's handmade, perfectly crafted, delicious stuff. And of course, Seal the Deal Wax Seals by Cecilia B. Perfect, nice little touch to a special occasion, a birthday, wedding, party of significance, whatever it may be. Nice little finishing touch for you. You can check her out on Instagram here, or you can also order it from the IE Sports Radio website using the link below. So do check that out. We have a ton of sports to get to, but first, of course, we must start with our beverage of choice for this evening. Now, the inspiration for this month's theme was very random. Oftentimes, I like to try a variety of beverages for people, ranging from nicer to more affordable and kind of covering different things. And sometimes I go with brands, sometimes I go with types. But in this case, I'm going with a particular brand for this month. So I was shopping in an Aldi's grocery store, which for those of you who do not know what Aldi is, it's a kind of, how do I describe Aldi? It's basically like a bulk discount store. They're affiliated with Trader Joe's. They have like name brand stuff that's like super cheap, super affordable, great for people on a budget. And they have a wine section that is kind of follows along those same lines. And I was in there and I was like, what are these wines taste like? They're brands that you're not going to find in any other store. They're very affordable, but are they great, or are they just, basically value brand? So this month's theme is Winking Owl. Now, Winking Owl is a Aldi exclusive option. You see here, It's got a little picture of a winking owl. It's super cheesy. It's super corny. It's a very plain looking bottle. It's nothing to look, nothing, that's going to catch your eye off of the shelf. They have a little back part here that kind of describes, it gives you a little bit of the details of the wine. It gives you the origin, which they're pretty much all out of California. The taste, the taste, the style, some of the notes, the food you pair with, and the serving temperature. Now, I have found that in many cases, the cheaper wine brands are better for sweet wines. Sweet wines are a little bit easier to produce. So we're starting off with a sweet wine. We are starting off with specifically their Moscato. Again, you see, out of California. Now, the California designation is important because it indicates that the grapes are actually from California. So hey, it's good to at least know that they're not just coming from they're not just from like Bob's, grapevines down the road. They're actually using California vineyards. Now, it doesn't specify a region. They are out of Modesto is where their vineyards are. But I'm sure they source their grapes from a variety of different inspirations. It is a screw cap, which, as many of you know, I'm a fan of the screw cap, especially when you're talking about a bottle of wine. Oh, by the way, Winking Owl, at least at the Aldi that is around the corner from me, goes for about $4 a bottle. So it's very affordable. They have all different varieties, and I tried to get a group that has a different spread so that we can get a different representation of the styles that they offer here. But we've got the Moscato here. We give our first initial little taste here. It looks very pale, almost clear, not uncommon for a Moscato. It's got a little bit of bubbles. I wonder if it does have a slight effervescence to it. It's not uncommon for a Moscato to have a little bit of the bubbles going on here. It smells like this Moscato. Doesn't have a ton of aroma to it, but again, when you're dealing with sweet wine, aroma isn't really going to be the name of the game. You can smell a little bit of sweetness, a little bit of apple and pear, kind of very classic, very simple, um, simple components to it. But of course, it's all about the taste. You know, it's not bursting with flavor. The flavors are very subtle, very light. It's sweet, but not overpowering. The flavor lingers pretty well. You know, again, again, we have to remember our expectations. It's like when we were grading our wines, right? When we were doing the scoring system, it's not universal. That's not the same scale that you're going to use at different levels. The expectations are different when you're talking about a $5 bottle of wine versus a $20 bottle of wine versus a $100 bottle of wine. So, the type of wine, low expectations, but you know what? It's not overpowering. It's not unbalanced. It's got good balance to it, so that's good. Does it knock your socks off? No. Are you coming away going, "Oh my god, this is the greatest wine that I've ever had"? No. But for $4 and for a sweet wine that's, something to enjoy on a summer day, maybe you're having friends over and you just want to have a bottle readily available, this will do the trick just fine. It's solid, it's decent. Scoring it on a scale to 100, remembering how the scale works, that you automatically start at 50 and you go up from there. Really, you start at 70. I've never seen a wine uh, score lower than a 70. You'd have to be pretty snooty to go lower than that. But this is probably a wine that would be in the upper 70s in score, mostly due to the fact that it doesn't have overpowering fruit characteristic. But again, it's a simple sweet wine. It's $4. For what it is, it's fine. It's good. It's solid. If you just want a cheap sweet wine, check. Boom, go get this one. It is 8% alcohol by volume, which is a little bit stronger than some Moscatos. Most Moscatos tend to fall in the 6-ish, 6.5, 5.5 range. But it's not so much stronger that it would be a problematic. Now, when Moscatos get into the 10 and 11%, then you might start stumbling over your words after a few glasses. But I mean, when you put it in the context that we've drunk beers that were 9.5% and 20-ounce cans, that's essentially that's essentially the same alcohol content that we are playing with right here. Wanted to give a couple of shout outs to some people in the chat room. Ralph Calise, who's also the host here of the Yinzer Report here on IE Sports Radio. She has jumped in the chat room. Good evening to you, sir. We got Larry B, the founder, the CEO of the network. Good evening to you, sir. And we've got Jen B jumping in as well. And with a comment, she's heard that Aldi has some good wine. Well, Jen, if you like sweet, this one, go get it. It's exactly what you need it to be. $4, doesn't taste bad, tastes fine, little bit of sweetness, easy drinking. That's a key for sweet wines as well. That'll take care of itself. And Larry B says it looks delicious. It's pretty good. Now, again, I will emphasize, I don't think this is amazing. I don't think this is not popping with flavor. You're not getting vibrant fruits flowing through, but it's good. And that's all I need out of a $4 bottle of wine. I don't need world changing. I just need good. I don't need bad. We're going to take our first little break here. When we come back, we are going to jump into our sports. Do not go away. You are listening to Let's Whine About DMV Sports here on IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that is sports.
Sports fans, do you like teams that are tough, cities that are tougher, and fan bases that are passionate about their teams? How about teams that are historic and stadiums that are iconic? Then you belong in Chicago, and you need to check out Chi-Town Weekly. Join me, Adam Kernan, every week as we keep up with all things Chicago sports. Bears, Bulls, Blackhawks, Cubs, White Sox. We'll cover them all, plus more. The Windy City is always buzzing, and we'll keep you up on all the big games and major stories. So tune in to Chi-Town Weekly every week right here on IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that is sports.
Everybody, this is Taryn Rodriguez. Are you a fan of volleyball? Are you a fan of Thunderous Spikes? Then I have the show for you, Set Point, where I cover NCAA men's and women's volleyball, high school boys and girls volleyball, beach volleyball, and even professional volleyball. Catch the action every week here on IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that is sports.
And welcome back to Let's Whine About DMV Sports here on IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that is sports. Now let's dive into some sports, right? Let's get right to it. So football season is very much upon us in both the professional ranks and the collegiate ranks. We are going to start with the professional ranks here, and unfortunately, We're going to have to start on a little bit of a low note. I know, but we got to start with the Ravens, who played the Kansas City Chiefs on Thursday Night Football last night and lost 27-20. It was a very good game. It was a very close game throughout. Both teams played very well. A couple of miscues on both sides, but the Ravens had the ball in the closing seconds with the opportunity to tie. And Lamar Jackson did find tight end Isaiah Likely, who had a whale of a game, by the way, in the back of the end zone for a touchdown. However, it appears that Isaiah Likely's feet were born one size too big for his purpose, as on further replay, his big toe, essentially on his right foot, landed out of bounds in the back of the end zone. Unfortunately, time had run out at that point, so that was the Ravens' final opportunity. What they thought was the potentially game time or even game winning touchdown, because the team looked like they were planning on going for two, turned out to be for naught. So they lose 27-20 on the road in Kansas City to start the season. That's a tough draw. That's not a better than 50-50 game for any team here in the league. So I'm not mad about it. There are some people that were saying, the refereeing might not have been the most fair. And I did see some replays where, maybe, the Chiefs got away with like a false start here and there, or, there were some penalties. There was one really weird incident where Chiefs defensive coordinator Steve Spagnuolo was allowed to call a timeout, whereas when defensive coordinators are not allowed to do so. So that was very strange. But at the end of the day, the Ravens did have a chance to win it. And I'm not even mad about their effort. It was really just bad luck at the end that, he managed to land out of bounds by that much. If you have not seen the replay of the final play, go back and check. Lamar Jackson played his heart out. Derrick Henry did not have the impact that many were hoping for in his first game as a Raven, but he did score a touchdown. Lamar led the rushing attack with over 100 rushing yards and threw for 200, I believe it's 279 passing yards. And Isaiah Likely was, like I said, the big star of the game for the Ravens receiving wise. He had a big touchdown catch, a very athletic touchdown catch at that. But he finished up with 9 catches for 111 yards and a touchdown. And Rashad Bateman actually contributed a little bit as well. He only had 2 catches, but there was a huge 38-yard catch on the final drive that set them up. Defensively, they only had 2 sacks, but they were getting some good pressure on Patrick Mahomes there, and Roquan Smith had an interception. Justin Tucker with an uncharacteristic miss from 53 yards, admittedly, but still. 273 passing yards, by the way, for Lamar Jackson. So the Ravens start the season 1-0. That's okay. That happens. Let's talk about, because I missed this last week, the team's final roster cuts. There weren't any major surprises on the team. They did keep an extra offensive lineman, which I was not expecting, but, given the way the rest of the roster worked out, I think they had that extra spot that allowed them to do so. The offensive line was not in the greatest form last night. I think that's probably due to having A, 3 new starters, and B, 2 guys essentially coming back from injuries last year and in the offseason. One of the injuries was Tyler Linderbaum, center, was injured for most of the preseason. He came back and looked decent, and Ronnie Stanley, left tackle, looked decent, but none of them really blew away the competition, and there were some weaknesses on the right side that I think the Ravens will have to adjust. They did keep undrafted rookie Bo Braid out of the University of Maryland, so that's great. Good for him. They kept an extra defensive back. Arthur Mollett did land on short-term IR, which I thought was not the greatest stroke of luck for the team, as he was going to be their main nickel guy. But they still have Marlon Humphrey, and Ardarius Washington can also man that spot. One interesting move that they did make was they did re-sign backup quarterback Tyler Huntley, who had left in the offseason for the Browns, but then was subsequently cut and now is back with the team. So they have their longtime backup. Huntley very famously made the strangest Pro Bowl appearance ever, I think, given that he was given the nod after throwing for 7 touchdown passes in 6 games, relieving Lamar Jackson. One injured season, I forget which year it was either 2021 or 2022, one of those. But yes, the strangest Pro Bowl appearance, I would say, ever. But he is back with the team, and hopefully that will stabilize what was one of the bigger question marks for the season for the Ravens, which was the backup quarterback spot. Now we are going to jump on over to the other major DMV team here, and that would be the Washington Commanders. Now, they have not played yet. So, they've got that going for them. That means they haven't lost yet. But their final roster cuts, really the big takeaway was the absolutely unfortunate 2023 draft class, which saw in these roster cuts, third round pick center Ricky Stromberg landed on the injured reserve list. Fourth round tackle Braden Daniels was cut. Fifth round defensive lineman KJ Henry was cut. Fifth round running back Chris Rodriguez was cut. And seventh round linebacker Andrews Jones was cut. So basically everybody who was taken on day 2 and day 3, basically everybody who's taken in the draft except for cornerback Emmanuel Forbes and safety Jatavius Martin, gone, which is a pretty strong indictment of Ron Rivera's final draft class. I mean, there's been running jokes basically all off season about how his picks were just terrible. The last few years, I mean, we could have had left tackle Christian Darrisaw, who's one of the best left tackles in the league, but instead he took linebacker Jamin Davis. And most of the moves that are criticized, they're moves that the fans wanted and were screaming at their television for. And they were like, no, we know what we're doing. We got this. The Jamin Davis over Darrisaw pick was bad. Then they picked, last year's big thing that everybody's mad about was them taking cornerback Emmanuel Forbes over cornerback Christian Gonzalez. Now, that one still has to play out a little bit because Gonzalez was injured as a rookie. So that one's still up for debate. But then the 2022 debacle of them trading back to get Jahan Dotson, when if they had stayed where they were, they could have gotten Chris Olave, wide receiver, or Kyle Hamilton, safety. And both of those guys would have been good. Now, Jahan Dotson has been traded in the offseason for a third-round pick, so they net loss there. Now, they did, in the trade back, gain extra picks later on in the draft, but one of those picks was Sam Howell, who has since been traded. And the other 2 picks, I believe Brian Robinson was one. He is still on the team, so I'll give him that. And then who was the other? There was a 4th-round pick. Was it Cole Turner? I don't remember. All I can tell you is that it didn't translate into a guy who's exactly tearing up the league for the Commanders at the moment. So, yeah, just really poor drafting, and that has kind of come to a culmination with the failure of the most recent draft class. The saddest note was no Brandon Ayuk. There were trade rumors for basically a month, with Ayuk going somewhere else. Will a team pony up the trade? Some people, including myself, thought the Jahan Dotson trade was a prelude to a Brandon Ayuk trade. But then he signed a massive extension with the 49ers to say. So no Brandon Ayuk, obviously. Now, what the team plans on doing at wide receiver other than Terry McLaurin, I haven't the slightest idea. They have rookie Luke McCaffrey. They have De'Ami Brown. They have a couple other journeyman guys. They just released Byron Pringle yesterday, so he's no longer on the team, but he was a reserve anyways. So really it will be fascinating to see how they revolve tight end, or, if they're just going to, run or wide receiver, or if they're just going to run multiple tight ends and multiple running backs every play to try to give rookie quarterback Jaden Daniels some support. We'll see how that plays out. Hopefully the offensive line can keep it together as well. We'll see how that unfolds. Now let's jump over to college football here. So we've missed a couple of weeks here, so let's get caught up really quick. Let's start with our good old Maryland Terrapins. That is supposed to say, hang on a second, let me correct that. Maryland, oh, there we go, that's who it was. Maryland actually beat up on UConn in their first game of the season, 50-7. So, yes, they lose Taulia Tungavailoa, but they come out and they drop 50 points in their opening game. So that's pretty good. But then today happened where they lost to Michigan State on a last-second field goal to fall 27-24. And, well, that result has a lot of people discouraged. And the reason it has a lot of people discouraged is because it's year in and year out with the Terps. Can they get over the hump? Can they beat Big Brother? And I mean, you look at the schedule this year, they have some tough teams on here. They got Penn State, they've got Oregon, they've got USC, they've got Iowa, but no Michigan, no Ohio State. So, the two big bads of the conference for the last few years not on the schedule. This might have been their opportunity to get some headway, and this was the game. You look at their first 6. If they had gotten past this game, 6-0 was not out of the realm of possibility, because they follow this up with Virginia, who we're going to talk about in a second here, Villanova, Indiana, and Northwestern. Not an impossible group. And so you look at the schedule and go, okay, they get past Michigan State, they get a little bit of momentum going, and now they could be 6-0 or 5-1 and ranked heading into that home game against USC, who, by the way, has a new quarterback now that, Caleb Williams has moved on to the NFL. But didn't happen. Team was unable to, get some momentum going and make some plays. I do want to shout out senior receiver Ty Felton, who in his first 2 games has 18 catches for, and I'm sorry, I have to do quick math because they haven't added today's numbers in. He had 11 catches for 152 and a touchdown today. And then 7 for 178 and 2 touchdowns against UConn. So all total, that's 18 for 18 catches for 330 yards and 3 touchdowns in the first 2 games of the season. I wonder if that has him on the NCAA leaderboards here. He would be once they update the stats. Well, doesn't look like they've updated anybody's stats here on ESPN. So he might get pretty high up on the rankings right off the bat. And Jen B makes a funny point. They might be able to beat Michigan this year with Michigan having a new head coach, having to replace several key players on their roster. But I mean, you can't beat Michigan State. That's not a good omen. And not saying Michigan State's bad, but again, they're not one of the big bads. They're not even like the top 3 or 4 on their schedule. So that's concerning if you're suffering that loss this early in the season. Also, shout out Dre Area Sports jumping in the chat, the new host of our Northern California show covering those really, really difficult San Francisco 49ers, who just seem to have endless pockets because they seem to be able to just re-sign everybody. It's absurd. But good evening to you, sir. Now we've got Virginia Tech is next on our list. The Hokies lost to Vanderbilt in overtime in the opening week. It's this very strange statement to say, as Vanderbilt is usually one of the weaker teams in the SEC as well as college football in general, because they just don't have the draw, and they also focus very strongly on academics. Not that that's bad, but that does preclude you from some football players, realistically speaking. But they did rebound and they beat Marshall today. So Virginia Tech sits at 1-1 on the season. It's a good start. None of the games have been conference play, so their conference record is not impacted yet. Let's take a look here at what they've got coming up down the schedule. Let's see. They've got Old Dominion, another DMV school who sadly is 0-2. They've got Old Dominion next week, and then Rutgers before probably their toughest game on the schedule at Miami at the end of September. Miami, by the way, ranked and might be top 10. Actually, yes, with Michigan losing. Actually, let's take a look at that. With Michigan losing, Miami might sneak a spot in the top 10 this week. Let's see. Yeah, Michigan lost. Penn State won, so that's not going to... Oh, yeah, Notre Dame losing. Yeah, Miami might be sneaky top 10. That would be fascinating to see the Hurricanes in the top 10. But in any case, yeah, so Virginia Tech has a couple of, Old Dominion, not the strongest opponent. Rutgers a little bit better, and then Miami kind of the big one. But, hey, if they can snatch these next two, you give them the loss to Miami, that puts them at 3-2. And with the rest of their schedule, Stanford, Boston College, Georgia Tech, Virginia or Syracuse, Clemson, Duke, Virginia, a bowl game is not impossible with this schedule. I'm not going to say it's going to be a great bowl game, but I could see a bowl game coming out of this schedule for Virginia Tech if they can secure these next two. That's the key. If they lose to Rutgers and then probably lose to Miami 2-3, that's going to be an uphill battle. That means realistically, none of these games are impossible. Georgia Tech is ranked, but they already have a loss, so they might not be ranked by after that. And that's at home, and Clemson's at home. Syracuse is on the road. Boston College is on the road. Yeah, none of these games are impossible. Duke is on the road, but it's Duke. Duke's not an amazing football program. Yeah, I could see there could be a bowl game in the future for the Hokies, which would be strange to say because I don't think we've gotten to say that in a couple of years. Then there's the Cavaliers. Now, Virginia Cavaliers beat Richmond last week pretty handily, 34-13. They're at Wake Forest currently, and unfortunately, they are losing 30-17 there in the third quarter. They do have the ball, although they did just have a false start, so that's not great. Might land them at 1-1 after this, and their schedule, they host Maryland. That's a tough one. Coastal Carolina, Boston College. They've got Louisville and at Clemson. They've got at Notre Dame. This is a tougher schedule. They do have SMU at the end. Yeah, I don't know. I don't think Virginia's really going to get as far. Their only win that we have to gauge them off of is a win over Richmond. So it's not exactly the greatest thing. Where at least we know Virginia Tech beat Marshall. I would hold Marshall in higher regard. And went toe-to-toe with Vanderbilt. So, they played two quality opponents, played one very close, and the other they beat. So, Virginia Tech, I would say as a whole, is looking better than Virginia at the moment. Taking a quick look at some of the other DMV schools we have, Navy has gone to 2-0. Congratulations to them. Liberty is at 1-0. They will be playing tonight. I believe they have New Mexico State, one of those two. And James Madison has started out the season 2-0. So really good performances by some of the rest of the DMV schools. I didn't have time to get everybody on the list, but those are some of the highlights so far. We're going to take another quick break. When we come back, we're going to jump into some baseball to finish off the show. Do not go away. You are listening to Let's Whine About DMV Sports here on IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that is sports.
Cleveland and Columbus sports fans. This is Jen B, host of the Show of the Land on IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that is sports. If you love Cleveland and Columbus sports like I do, be sure to tune in live to the Show of the Land on Tuesdays, where we will cover the Cleveland Browns, Cavs, Guardians, and Monsters. We will also talk about the Columbus Blue Jackets, Crew, Fury, and of course, the Ohio State Buckeyes. We'll also cover other colleges in the area like Akron, Kent State, Cleveland State, Mount Union, John Carroll, Baldwin Wallace, Youngstown State, among others. So like I said, if you love Cleveland and Columbus sports like I do, be sure to tune in Tuesdays to the Show of the Land with Jen B on IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that is sports.
What's up, Pittsburgh? This is Ralph DeLeese, the host of the Injury Report on IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that is sports. Are you that passionate diehard Steelers, Penguins, Pirates, or just a Pittsburgh sports fan? Then please join me on the Injury Report every Tuesday on IE Sports Radio, the direct feed for all that is sports. And I will update you on all that's black and gold. Have you telling your Pittsburgh fans and friends what's up with Pittsburgh sports. Tune in Tuesday with me, Ralph DeLeese, the Injury Report on IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that is sports. Let's go!
And welcome back to Let's Whine About DMV Sports here on IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that is sports. We have entered the final portion of our show. I have poured my second glass of wine, which is, of course, my prime time to remind everybody of the show's main message, which is please drink responsibly. Do not drink and drive. One of my favorite social media posts regarding this topic is that you can afford an Uber or a taxi before you can afford a DUI. So please drink responsibly. Do not drink and drive. It is simply not worth it. I will not be going anywhere after this, and if you have been drinking, neither should you. So if you're at home, please stay put. Or if you're out and about enjoying your weekend, meeting up with friends, going to a party, whatever it may be, please find a safe method home. Uber, taxi, designated driver, Lyft, Amazon, ship yourself home. I don't care what it is. Just please do not drink and drive. It is simply not worth it. I think it is about high time, folks, that we start talking about some baseball. We have made it 45 minutes into the show without doing so. So we got to kick it off with the Orioles here. Tough loss today against the Tampa Bay Rays. However, they do still sit at 82-61 overall. That is good enough for second in the division, half a game behind the New York Yankees, solidly in the first wild card spot. In fact, let's get a quick update here. I think most of the games have probably finished. Actually, no, there's a bunch of games still going on. A lot of games in the eighth and ninth inning. Of course, we've got some West Coast games. The Guardians are on the West Coast. I'm not going to say the score for the benefit of Gen B in the chat room. Yep, half a game behind. The Yankees will probably stay ahead of Cleveland. Looks like they are 4 games up on Kansas City. Has Kansas City played today? The Royals. Yes, the Royals beat the Twins. So 4 games up on Kansas City, who's in the hunt for the second wild card spot, and 5.5 games up on Minnesota, who currently owns the third wild card spot. 10 games up on the Red Sox, although that might be 9.5 after today's game, which is great. A great spot to be in with 19 games to go. to be that far off up on a divisional opponent. So overall, they're still well within the hunt. In fact, they've managed to even gain a little bit of separation from a couple of teams, which is great. They had won 4 of 5 before today's loss, so they have gotten a little bit of momentum going. Still 5-5 in the last 10 there. But what are their keys for the rest of the month? They only have 19 games left, basically 3 weeks left in the season. In fact, I think tomorrow marks 3 weeks until the end of the season. So what are the keys? Health. It's got to be the health. They've already gotten Zach Eflin back. They're on pace to get Joe Webb back by the end of next week. Key reliever, which will be crucial down the stretch. And I believe they are slated to get Danny Colomb, Ryan Mountcastle, Grayson Rodriguez, and Jordan Westberg all back from injury before the end of the season. There's been very positive injury updates on everybody except Mountcastle. Of the 4, Mountcastle might be the one that I can live with the most not getting back. Not that I love Ryan Mountcastle, and his defense at first base has been missed as Ryan O'Hearn has made a few errors in the last week or so. So his defense has been missed, but Westberg would be a very significant upgrade, especially with Ramon Urias hurt. He would be, his consistency with the bat and his quality glove would be a massive addition at third base and second base, so that, the rookie Jackson Holliday isn't forced to start every day, especially in the playoffs. Having Westberg back would be huge. Colomb is your 8th inning guy, 7th, 8th inning guy, along with Yanir Cano and Webb and Cionel Perez. That really strengthens the bullpen a lot and allows them to move on from, having to use guys like Matt Bauman and, using Greg Soto in tight spots and, Craig Kimbrell especially, who has just had an absolutely atrocious second half collapse. So health, a big piece, and stars playing like stars. The 3 best players on this team have been wildly inconsistent in the second half of the season. Adley Rutschman has been in a 2.5-month slump that's seen his batting average drop to 255. His OPS is like the 8th best on the team at this point. He needs to turn it around. Gunnar Henderson has started to turn around a bit over the last week, although his numbers had slumped. And then Corbin Burns, the ace of the team, really rough in August, has rebounded a little bit in his last 2 starts, but need more. The stars of this team need to be stars. If Henderson, Rutschman, and Burns are off of their game entering the playoffs, this team is not getting past the divisional round. They might not even make it past a wild card series if that is indeed where they land. So that is going to be the big key for them down the stretch. The key series remaining, the Red Sox, they've got the series against the Red Sox coming up on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. They can put them away for good, although they might already be put away, let's be real, unless the Red Sox manage to sweep. Cross your fingers that doesn't happen. Oh, that would be terrible. If the Red Sox sweep, then they get their way back in it, but as long as the Orioles win 1, winning 2 out of 3 would be great just to put them away for good and end their season. But the Yankees series, the way these 2 teams have not wanted to win the division over the past 2 months, 2.5 months, has been incredible to watch, because on June 17th, after the Orioles beat the Phillies 2 out of 3, the Yankees had like a 4-game lead on them. The Orioles won a series against the Yankees, and both teams have been below 500 since that series. So nobody's really taken over the other. And if that trend continues, then the second to last series of the season against the Yankees is going to be huge. If these teams are within 1 or 2 games of each other, that's going to swing it one way or the other. Luckily, the Orioles only need to win 1 in order to own the head-to-head tiebreaker over the Yankees for the season. But realistically, if they're behind, they need to win 2 out of 3. In order to give themselves a fair shot. Because if they're behind and the Yankees win the series, then the tiebreaker might not even matter, especially with the Orioles' last series against the Twins. I would like the team to not have to win 2 of 3 or sweep in order for them to secure the division, if that is indeed the case. Now, if their fate is sealed and it's wild card and it's probably number one wild card, then I would say, I don't care as much about their playing the Twins. But all of that is to be determined. They have the game against Tampa Bay, the final game of the season against the Rays, who I believe I think their season record against them is like 8-3, 8-4. So they've already handily won the season series against the Rays, but it would be nice to get the victory tomorrow, especially with Burns on the mound. Let's see if he can do something to help us out there. And then they have their 4 series leading up to the Yankees series are the Red Sox, 2 series against the Tigers, interestingly enough, which I don't love because the Tigers actually quietly one of the hottest teams in the American League, which is strange because they're basically out of the playoffs. But I mean, actually, I think they were playing their way back into the discussion last I checked. Let's take a quick look at that. But yeah, 2 series against the Tigers, 1 against the Red Sox, and 1 against the Giants. So 3 solid team, 4 series against solid teams. Detroit, 72-71, 4.5 games behind Minnesota for the final wild card spot, with Boston 4 games behind Minnesota. So they're not out of it yet, but they've cooled off. Actually, they're 5-5 in their last 10. And then we have the Nationals to finish off our baseball segment here. Give me 1 second. There we go. Get that nice Nationals red. Actually, I don't think that's quite Nationals red, but it's close. All right. The week in review. Now, I was holding the Nationals off because they are currently playing the second game of their doubleheader against the Pittsburgh Pirates. So let's see what's going on there. Is the game still going? It is still going. It is in the bottom of the 9th. The Nationals are up 8-6. So this number might change. The 63-78 might be 64-78, but it looks like, they'll still have the 3rd worst record in the National League and the 6th worst record overall in baseball. Now, the keys for the Nationals over the final month is the continued youth movement, which the team has been regularly trotting out lineups where everybody's 26 or younger. So I think we can check that off of the list pretty well, that they're going to continue to do that. But also draft positioning. Now, this is very interesting. It's a little caveat with the new system that they put in place with the draft lottery, is that the teams cannot pick in the lottery more than 2 years in a row, no matter what. Now, there are different rules based on the size of their market, which the Nationals unfortunately kind of got screwed over with last year, although they still landed Seaver King, who's been off to a hot start in high A. So, maybe it worked out in the end. But because of these rules, so the Nationals are the 6th worst team in all of baseball based on record. However, the Chicago White Sox, which this is deplorable in all reality because they're going to have a historically terrible record, but the Chicago White Sox and the Colorado Rockies, I believe, is the other team, or it's the Oakland Athletics. It's one of the two teams that are worse than the Nationals, but can't pick in the lottery, whereas the Nationals can. So right now, interestingly enough, the Nationals have the 4th best lottery odds of getting the number 1 pick, and they would slot in 4th overall, likely based on how the draw would go. So that makes the positioning critical. Now, it's unlikely because I believe the 3 teams that are ahead of them in the odds, I believe, are Miami, Colorado, and the Angels. They can't get a worse, mathematically they can get a worse record than all of them, but I'd be very surprised if they got a worse record than Miami, who's 10.5 games worse than them, and Colorado, who's 11 games worse than them. I sincerely doubt those two. The Angels are 4.5 games worse. That's possible. But the Nats are also only 3 games worse than Pittsburgh and 3.5 games worse than Toronto. And that might actually be 2 games worse than Pittsburgh. So the draft positioning, I'm not saying it's critical, but it's something to watch to see, where this team lands, because they've got that surprising advantage, and that might actually give them a little. I mean, I'm not that there's incentive to lose, because you should never purposefully lose, but there is not. There's a possibility that they could get a really good draft pick, and that will continue to help this rebuild, which could be accelerating pretty quickly as these young players develop and evolve. Meanwhile, we now have one out in the bottom of the ninth. Now, closer Kyle Finnegan, I think they might be playing to have his arm get thrown off, because the poor guy has already thrown 56 innings this season. He had a relief appearance today already, and now here he is, trying to close out 2 games in one day, which would actually be a really impressive feat. I'd be very impressed for him to be able to pull that off. But yes, one out, and there's an 0-2 count, so we'll see how that develops. Thank you all for tuning in. Thank you, Gen B, for the shout out. Thank you for tuning in live. Thank you to everybody who jumped in the chat room. There was a bunch of you in there. I really do greatly appreciate it. Once again, if you have not done so, follow us on all of these below social media platforms at IE Sports Radio. Follow yours truly at Let'sFind_IESR on X, Instagram, and TikTok. You can listen to us, since you unfortunately missed the live version of the show. That's okay. I'll forgive you. But you can listen to us on replay on any of the below options. Check out our website, where you can find our merchandise, show pages, and blog. Again, shout out to our sponsors, Planet Jerky Premium Beef Brisket Jerky. So you can follow them on Instagram, and you can order their jerky direct. You should do that right after. In fact, you know what? You've watched enough of the show. Go directly to that website and order yourself some jerky. You've earned it tonight. And of course, shout out to Seal the Deal Wax Seals, where you can find on Instagram, and you can order off of the website. We will be back next week to continue Winking Owl Wine Month, as well as talking more baseball, more football, and at some point, guys, we're going to have to start fitting some other sports in here, because NHL's right around this corner, and WNBA is finishing up their season, and NBA is not far away. It's about to get real busy in the DMV. Once again, thank you for tuning in, and of course, please drink responsibly. Do not drink and drive. This has been Mike Patt for Let's Whine About DMV Sports here on IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that is sports. Have a great week. See you next time.